The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official positions of the sponsors, advertisers, or presenters. Advertising does not imply endorsement by the sponsors and presenters.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Lighting Controls Podcast. We have another fantastic guest for you today, but before we jump into things, I am extremely sorry to those of you who are not watching this, but today is Fun Friday. We're changing it up a little bit. It's the start of summer. Hawaiian shirt is in full effect, and we are going with it today. Before we jump in, let me take a minute to remind everyone, today's episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Association.
And it's financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, or NAILD. Check out our website, lightingcontrolspodcast.com. Got a lot of information, all of our episodes, and information about the NAILD LSC, the new certification that is happening. By the time you're hearing this episode, we've already done our inaugural classes, and we'll probably have some feedback by this point. But, if you want to learn more about it, please check it out. We really want to offer a great resource to the industry. But also huge shout out to our sponsor for this episode, which we could not do this without, MaxLight CMax platform. If you are unfamiliar with this platform, I highly recommend you go to MaxLight, maxlite.com/CMAX, because it is a really interesting lighting control solution where, with the MaxLight form factor of using USB-C connectivity on all of their fixtures are ready to go for integration with their lighting controls platform, which can range from the most basic lighting controls options to fully networked lighting control solutions building wide and everything in between. And all you need to do is get a USB-C pluggable device from MaxLight, plug it in, it's ready to go. Got triple LC or just basic dimming and switching control. Whatever you need to have happen, they're ready to go. So I really recommend you check it out. It's a great option. MaxLight, maxlite.com/CMAX. But let's get into the conversation. So today we have Wes. Wes, do you mind just giving us a quick breakdown on who you are and what you do?
My name's Wes Hacking. I'm the lighting controls specialist at Cooper Electric, and I'm coming to you from our lighting controls lab here in Midtown Manhattan. I came to lighting controls the way most good lighting controls people do, through the theater. I have a degree in lighting design. I worked as an assistant to some Broadway designers, Don Holder, Marcia Madera, a few people like that. And then I went into actually working at PRG in the systems team. So we were working on designing theaters and designing mostly ETC systems. We did ETC Strand. And I came in the early 2000s just as Color Kinetics was getting started with their LED fixtures. So that was one of the first things I went and learned. Was I've been training in the Color Kinetics factory since 2005. So I was an early adopter of the fun toys.
Yeah. No, well, thank you for coming on to the show. And just to be clear, you said Cooper Electric. That's not to be confused with Cooper Lighting, which is a big
It is not.
manufacturer.
It is not Cooper Lighting. Cooper Electric's electrical distributor here in New York. Actually, now we encompass all the way down from probably Wilmington, Delaware, to most of New York State and out through most of Pennsylvania. And we're a subsidiary of Sonepar, which is worldwide as far as electrical distribution goes. And back in 2017, Cooper decided for their lighting team to bring on myself and another person as control specialists. Just because before that, they were relying on reps to do it all. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't.
Well, and I think, one of the interesting things is that we don't really get many distributors. I think you're the first distributor that we've had on the podcast. And so for those who might not be familiar with what a distributor does, do you mind just explaining the role of the distributor when it comes to lighting controls?
Well, our team has a lighting group here, so we supply lighting for project-based lighting and controls. For bid jobs, we do design build work. Part of what I did here with the lab was building this to try and simulate problems I found on job sites, actually.
Mm.
So we go out, and we're not your average distributor. We actually go and program some of our own systems. It sort of comes from, and I'm advocating for architectural lighting manufacturers to do this, comes from my experience. I was trained as an ETC tech. And the idea that ETC has distributors, but they also have dealers who are able to go program the systems and do that, makes a lot of sense.
Right.
To
And
me.
so you operate much more like a dealer would, whereas a distributor doesn't really do that hands-on level of work, and they more focus on drop shipping, box sales, instead of providing that additional layer of hands-on programming and installation.
Yeah, and just being able to help the customer more directly, and quite frankly, it's the business is so immediate that it's better for the distributor to have that capability to be able to go out to a job site, solve a problem. If you have to go and get a tech from a manufacturer to go look at something, and then it may require another visit just to solve it, we can be out there on a lot shorter notice.
Well, and this is an unintentional advertisement for the Nailed LSC, but this is sort of that added layer of service that distributors can provide if they have in-house control specialists.
Yep.
And so,
absolutely.
Like what was the genesis of providing lighting controls? Why did Cooper decide to create the role of lighting control specialist?
I think it was because they wanted to have more control directly over what happens with the controls on jobs. And someone to interface. We have a lot of great guys who know lighting, can tell you, which ceiling tile which fitting you need for a ceiling tile, which which driver you need, but they don't know controls. So it was all done through the manufacturer and the rep, and they don't have that contact with the engineer directly during a project. They may go in and help specify in the beginning, but by the time you get to a project, they're usually out of it. So bringing Kevin Kondrak and myself, who are the two controls people here, bringing us in, we were able to sort of be the interface either between the manufacturer or the rep and our customers. And when there was an issue, or whenever issues arise, we're able to solve that usually internally before it becomes something that becomes a problem.
Well, what's a good example of an issue that might arise on a project with lighting controls that you've found a way to?
I can tell you all the time. We see a lot of drawings where, especially if there's a DMX system of some kind of, we do a lot of office fit outs, and they usually include some type of feature wall. Everyone wants their feature wall that has color changing on it. We will see drawings that come out usually with, here's your color kinetics controller or Pharos or whatever is going to control that. And then the regular architectural manufacturer puts in DMX controls for it as well. So we're able to go in there, we look at drawings, we see that, and we're able to say, okay, you've got overlap here. So, which one do you want? Do you want manufacturer A to control it or manufacturer B to control it? And then in the long run, it saves money. It helps the end user, which is really the goal.
Yeah, Wes, you're very much a man after my own heart, right? Coming from the theater, worked for a dealer, it's CK guy. It's just, so we're in the same thing, right? We are a dealer. We do a lot of ETC. We're a CK, partner. We do a lot of the same stuff. So I'm very curious, having been in that sort of role and working with for a dealer in an integration team. What was the big jump for you? What made you want to sort of leave that world, or not leave the world, but leave sort of working for a dealer and go to working for an electrical distributor?
Well, I had a few steps in between. I went freelance, and I actually worked for a while doing some design. I was a sub for the Color Kinetics factory doing startups for Color Kinetics. Um, I would do consulting on LED systems, a lot of exterior facade work, that kind of stuff. And then I've always had this problem where I love being independent, but I hate bookkeeping. I hate all the other stuff that goes with it. So having a company behind me is always good. So in 2010, I actually went to work for Crestron in their lighting controls team, and I spent a few years there, and then went to the Lutron rep, and then landed here at Cooper. And in between, I had stints where I was working independently, doing various projects, various consulting. And it just made sense. Kevin Kondrak and I, who work together, we've worked together at actually 3 different companies now, are sort of work partners. And Kevin said, "Hey, he came on first and said, there's this great opening." So I talked to the people here. They said what they wanted to do. They said we'd get supported in it, and we talked about. That was the early talks about having a lab like this, which came out of my time at PRG, because we had a lab where we were doing all kinds of testing and custom manufacturing and things like that at PRG, where and even a few fun things. One of my coworkers at PRG actually did proof of concept that you can generate DMX over a 24-inch sidearm.
That's awesome.
We just had an episode about this recently too, where this was with David Fox. He was saying he's done it over barbed wire, but I did not hear about over a sidearm. Which, for those who are unfamiliar with a sidearm, do you mind just giving an explanation of what that is?
It's a 3/4-inch pipe that you can extend out from your main pipe for theatrical fixtures.
And so, you're basically you use it to kind of offset where that fixture is going to be based on where it would otherwise have mounted.
Yeah.
And so it's really not meant to be any kind of conductor of data.
No, not at all. and don't try this at home. Or don't try this on your job.
Yeah. Well, it'll work until it doesn't. So
yes.
Yep.
Well, and I find that a lot in the field. And that's the other part of having this lab, is just things I find in the field that I need to test here, or I want to try new things here.
So what are, since you mentioned finding things in the field, what are some of the most common sort of issues or failures that you find in the field?
A lot of times it's wiring. I had a project recently where it was a Lutron system with their low voltage bus, and they used all Lutron cable, except their spool must have run out on the last 2 runs, and they used whatever they had there, some alarm wire and a pair of number 12s, and it worked.
Bummer.
until it didn't.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, that
Yeah.
is sort of the thing that we hear the most, is that
A lot.
wiring is the issue. And so I think that's another reason why triple LC is becoming more popular, is it circumvents
Yeah.
the wiring process. And so from your perspective as a distributor, are you seeing a tighter focus on triple LC over networked lighting controls?
Not as much, honestly. A
Huh.
lot of I think the perception is still that it's more expensive, and until we can
Mm.
dispel that with people. Um,
Well, so and you're the one who's dealing with the money for the most part. Are you saying that it's not more expensive to go triple LC over NLC?
um, I think there are a lot of times you can equalize that cost in installation savings.
Hmm.
Sure.
You know, I'd love to get some fixtures here. One of the next things I'm putting up on the wall is I have some Enlight demo equipment, and I'd
Hmm.
like to get a fixture with LLC controls in it, just to show
Hmm.
people that. Um, but one of the other things that I'm testing here before I actually ever try and use it in the field. So I have a Pharos set up, and I have a Lutron Vibe system, and Pharos just wrote a nice I/O to connect to Lutron
Hmm.
systems. And I'm sort of putting it through its paces, seeing what I can do. I
Hmm.
can control my overheads off the Pharos touchscreen, and
Well, and I think that that's a really interesting thing to note here, is the fact that you are doing so much experimentation and testing
Mm.
in house,
Yeah.
because I imagine that there are a number of people who go, well, that should be the manufacturer's responsibility, right? So,
um,
why are you doing it in
yeah.
house?
It's because I want to provide solutions for our customers that I know work, and
Hmm.
when we do these design build projects, one of the worst feelings is being out there in the field with something you specified and finding out that, hey, that's not going to work
Right.
the way you thought.
Yep.
No,
Um,
and I think that
and
that's a really important thing for specifiers to know too, is like, yeah, just because on paper it should work
Yep.
doesn't mean that it'll
Yes.
actually work. I'm
yeah,
sure, Ron, you've dealt with that too many times by now.
Oh yeah. I mean, we do a lot of our own. We don't have like a formal lab. I wish we did set up like that, but we have a whole test bench area, and we're constantly putting things together and taking them apart for that exact reason. Is it's a lot of times just because something says it works on paper doesn't mean it works. It might work, but it might not work the way you need it to specifically for that project. And it really is
Right.
the job of, well, it used to be the job really of the dealer or the integrator, but now we're seeing it more where it's the distributors as well, right? It really is whoever's providing that integration service. It is their job to really do their due diligence ahead of time to make sure that the system that's being sold, if they're selling it, hopefully, is going to work the way they expect it to, and that it's going to provide the end user the result that everyone truly wanted.
yeah, and that's one of the other things we do here is that kind of integration. We had a project a few years back that was it's basically a Lutron system with their ESN, the little 4-circuit relay panels. Um, but they had two conference rooms that had new mat ceiling with color kinetics, basically the nodes you see behind me here.
Hmm.
Um, and they wanted that integrated with the system. So we gave them in each room 8 scenes. I did the integration with contact closures, and it worked really well. And
Yeah, well, and
I did the drawings here because
mm,
the install on it for the electrician was a lot simpler if I did the Lutron
Yep.
and the color kinetics and said, here's how they're going to integrate. Here's your
Yep.
one line for both. And you never get that. You're not going to get that from a manufacturer. They're not going to integrate with other
Nope.
people's
right.
systems.
Well, and that is the challenge there, because right
Yeah.
now a lot of lighting control systems in North America are designed by sales reps who don't
Yes.
cross over to other systems. And so having a distributor that does that work, I mean, really, I would make the argument that you're not operating as a distributor, you're operating as a dealer.
Yeah.
Like, you may be distributor in name, but in function, you're a dealer, which is a phenomenal resource for sure. Because,
Yeah.
we don't see a lot of commercial dealers. We see a lot of theatrical dealers like Port Lighting, Ron's company, that
Yeah.
do like DMX and some other systems. But for the most part, they're not going to do your triple LC system, right, Ron? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys would do that.
We do. It is something we're starting, not that that matters, but it is something we're starting to do more of. But in the past, no, not so much, right? We were very focused
Right.
on DMX, color changing, the fun stuff, right? We're very focused on the fun stuff.
Right, exactly. Whereas Wes, your group is much more focused on the daily, typical commercial office spaces and
Absolutely.
other
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah.
But, I think that right there is another thing that I think a lot of people have a misconception about, which is that, the simple office space lighting control solution doesn't need anybody to hover over it and make sure that it's designed correctly or installed correctly or programmed correctly. And would you agree with that statement?
It runs the gamut, really. I mean, we have some
Sure.
projects that are literally in-wall line voltage sensors, and we'll put it together in-house, and a lot of times we can price it in-house. The whole idea is we do DIY type stuff.
But I mean, even
And
there,
then,
you are kind of overseeing that. You're making sure that the right
yeah,
device is selected. So, can,
absolutely.
just a contractor go to a distributor, buy box goods, and walk away without any oversight or knowledge and do it correctly?
I think some can, some don't want that. They want direction.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm here to provide that, even
Sure.
if it's just me running out to a job site for 2 hours just to say, here's how you wire them.
Right.
This connect is a three-way if you need a three-way switch, and here's how you program your in-wall sensor if you wanted vacancy or occupancy. I just point out, I'll bring the installation manual with me and say, here's how you do that.
Yeah, and that's really the value add that you are
Yes.
or you're offering as part of working for a distributor, and that's a lot. Not not to knock distributors. This is exactly where we want distributors to get to, right? But most distributors don't currently offer that service. So the fact that your customer is able to call you, you're the endpoint to them, right? They're able to call
Yeah.
you, and you can get out to the site or answer their question over the phone, and it's not the hey, hang on, let me call the manufacturer and see if I can get you an answer. That is a huge value add for you guys, which sets you apart from your competition.
Yeah. I mean, there are a couple of other people who are sort of doing what we do, but it's not widespread.
Yeah. No, and I think it's very much those who do it first are going to be the ones that become
Yes.
the front runners of this. So Cooper Electric is one of the first out of the gate, which gives you a much better opportunity over those who will probably, I mean, I would say that it's an eventuality. It's not an if but when kind of situation where the
I think
distributors
you
are going to
need
be doing
that.
this.
Yeah. I think you really need that. You need the immediacy that a distributor can provide on this.
Right.
And just the time it takes to get a quote out of a rep or to schedule a startup from a rep, our business moves way too quickly.
Right. Well, and so here's the other thing that people push back on this is that it's too expensive to have an in-house lighting control specialist. So is there a profitability to having an in-house lighting control specialist?
Well, I think what we do, Kevin and I, is we're able to look at controls, specified controls, and say, hey, if you do it this way, we can save you money. And also even maybe make a little more for Cooper Electric on a job.
Right.
If we
Because,
find
you're
some
providing a
savings here and
service.
there,
Right.
yeah. And we don't charge necessarily for the service. I mean, if we're going out programming, we charge for that. But the design
Sure.
services, usually we provide gratis because we either know it's a customer, we're going to get the job for sure,
Hmm.
or it's something
So it's
where
more of
we
a
can
sweetener.
we can register a project with a manufacturer and say, we designed this, and
Hmm.
we're going to get a better price than anyone else.
Nice.
If it goes out to bid.
Well, and I think that that's another thing that's really important about this is the fact that you have these relations with the manufacturers. You're not beholden the same way that a manufacturer's rep is, but you do develop these connections, and you have these ways of getting better resources to the end user, probably because there's a financial incentive to the manufacturer to use you for the project because they have a local boots on the ground resource for that.
Yeah, not all manufacturers see it that way, unfortunately,
Sure.
and that's why I do advocate for this whole dealer distributor separation.
Hmm.
I wish the
Yeah.
architectural manufacturers would buy into that, because I think Cooper would be willing to keep the staff on that got factory trained, and for some of the manufacturers anyway. I mean, we're an ETC distributor. I don't think we'd ever do enough ETC where being an ETC dealer would be beneficial to us.
Sure. But I mean, you also
But
have a lot of competition in that territory. Theatrical
that's
Yeah.
dealers
that's true.
have existed for a good amount of time. Commercial
And
dealers, on the other hand, is where.
that's true. And we have good working relationships with the theatrical dealers here, the Barbizons, the PRGs here. So
Mhm.
if we need something, we can always go to them and get a project quoted.
Right. Well, and I think that
And for
that's
bigger projects,
even further.
for yeah,
Yes.
go
Go ahead.
for bigger projects, that makes more sense because they have the project managers in house. Something like,
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
we supplied recently the Penn Station, the luminous ceiling that has
Yep.
all the video in it, and that was done through
Hmm.
Barbizon. But I was
Hmm.
involved with Barbizon, and we did some mock-ups originally at the fixture manufacturer with the guys from
Nice.
Acuity. That one was actually one where I went in, I looked at the fixtures, the way they were designed, because they're these 5x5 fixtures, and the customer said they wanted to increase the resolution. And when they came to me and they said that, I looked at it and I said, if you increase the resolution, each fixture is going to be its own universe. Why don't we build in, it was Acuity, they own Pathway, build in a node, build in a Pathport Uno node into the fixture, and it becomes a network device, and you don't need
Hmm.
that DMX distribution everywhere. The cost to increase the resolution would have been cost prohibitive, so they stuck with the original, and it is
Gotcha.
DMX distribution everywhere. But those are the kind of things I do for even specified projects. When our salesperson gets a request like that, he comes to me and I say, well, this is the best way to do it.
Right. Well, and that, because I mean, basically, contractors will reach out to you for an estimate during bidding process on a specification project, and you
Yeah.
have to come up with a figure rather quickly most of the time.
Mm.
You usually, like, what's a typical turnaround for a quote?
It depends on the size of the job.
Sure.
We usually get bigger jobs 2 weeks, small jobs a
Yeah.
week. Sometimes, we've gotten
Right.
requests where we say we need it in 2 days, and if it's something we could do in house, we'll just sit down, design it in house, and price it.
Right. But I
And
mean,
and
that speed
and that
requires skill.
Yes, yes, and you need to be able to look at those drawings real quickly and say this manufacturer will work, this one won't. You know, if it's wired, you know, it's going to be maybe Lutron, maybe current. You know, if it needs room
Yeah.
controllers, you know, it could be
Well, and
watt stopper.
I love that you said which manufacturer would fit the project, because there's so many people out there that look at lighting controls as just pick a brand and stick with it and they'll
Right.
solve all of your problems. But you just said, you know, there are going to be some that are better for one project versus some that are better for others. And so how many brands do you kind of sift through?
Um, we're willing to work with anyone who wants to work with us, and the idea is that we're DIY. We do a lot of
Mhm.
our submittals in house. You know, I work in AutoCAD. We have another guy in the office who actually knows AutoCAD. Um, we work with Lutron's a lot of our bread and butter. I was trained. Got a level 1 training a few years back at the Wattstopper factory on how to program Wattstopper systems. We've been trained in Nlight, Cooper wavelengths. But we're really willing to work with any manufacturer. My requirements are we need to be able to price it ourselves on a portal,
Mhm.
or have a good turnaround from our rep.
Mhm.
Mhm.
We need to be able to do the submittals, and if you have a tool for that, I will compliment Lutron. They have a fantastic piece of software to design their systems that can generate all the documents. Other manufacturers have similar systems as well, a similar software. But Lutron by far, if I have one of those 2-hour turnarounds, it's probably going to be a Lutron system because I can do it more quickly in
Mm.
the Lutron software.
Interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
It's nice that you like you said, you mentioned that it's what's the right fit for the project, because that really is the best approach to take. And unfortunately, that's not always the approach that is taken on projects, but it's the right approach to take. And I
Absolutely.
understand reps do not have that luxury, right? They have their brands and that's what they have. And I completely understand that. But from a controls solution, the best solution is whatever's right for the project, best for the customer, not necessarily what's sometimes best for everyone's wallets. And that is
Yes.
hard in North America to get around. There's zero question around about it. So that's, you mentioned all the training and stuff that you've gone through, and I don't think people realize how much training there is between all of the various manufacturers when you're trying to maintain those, whether it's a dealership or your distribution network or however, to go through all that training for all these different companies, which it really does ultimately help you if you know a little bit, even if it's just a little bit, about every different manufacturer and how they operate. So how is all of that training that you've been through from all the manufacturers, how does that help you with your design and on site with your customers?
Um, well, I can give you an example I'm working on right now. We had a customer come to us. It was through the GC, and they were under the gun where another branch of ours had supplied decorative fixtures and things like that. And the project manager down there introduced me to the GC she was working with, because they hadn't really thought about controls. So I went in and talked to him, and he said, we're walls are closed up. We need to close up ceilings real soon, and we need a system. And I said, well, if you're going to close up ceilings real soon, it's got to be something wireless. So, and if you needed this quickly and readily available, we went with the Lutron Vive, and it turned out it worked for them. We're in the middle of
Mhm.
we're waiting on the equipment to come, and I'll go program it in a couple of weeks. And it was an small office space or well, I won't say small, medium-sized office space. um, where it didn't need high end controls. And it's one of the things I like about the Lutron Vive. Actually, it could be high end. It's sort of low end, but it could be high end if you need it to be.
Mm.
Depending on
Well,
how you program it and what features you employ.
right. Well, and I think that that's another thing there, which is interesting, is the fact that you're not just thinking through devices, but you're also thinking through programming. Like, how capable is the system of achieving what you're trying to get? And so, do you like, how do you, like, if somebody came to you and said, I have a brand new lighting control system, like, how would you start evaluating that system?
The first thing I say, and people have come in, the first thing I say is, come, let's do a lunch and learn in our office. Let our whole team look at it, because we have some good project managers on the fixture side who will look at controls sometimes and say, well, our fixtures normally have a certain driver. How would you control this? Or, everyone
Hmm.
tries to base their controls around 0 to 10 volt. And we do get a lot of projects that are decorative and are phase dimmed fixtures.
Hmm.
So how do you do phase dimmed? Is it a dedicated dimmer?
Right.
Is it, some interface? And how does it work? Can it do a full 16 amps, or are we limited on what we can do with this?
Yeah.
Those kind of questions come up. And then I'll go and I'll say, I'll give them basically the DIY spiel that I give every manufacturer, and say, we do our stuff in house. How do you have a software that I can design your systems with? And even if it's just something I can do in Bluebeam, if they have the Bluebeam
Hmm.
symbols, I'll do that. And can we either have a hot sheet, or is there a portal we can price directly on? And then I'll say, we need the training for programming, and we
Hmm.
need demo gear. And if I said, before I can specify it, I need to try it out here. I need to try and break it. And if I can't break it, we'll put it on jobs.
No, I think that that's a really great list of requirements, because I think,
Mm.
a lot of people don't even know how to start. It's like, yeah, I've used brand X for so many years that I'm just going to keep using them because I don't know any other
Right.
systems. But it is actually quite easy to start learning other systems, and a lot of lighting controls manufacturers are willing to meet all of the criteria you just listed, including giving you
Yeah.
samples. And so, because they want you to sell the equipment. So
Hmm.
if somebody wanted to get Cooper Electric involved in a project, what would be their first step?
They can call me, Kevin. Just call the office. If they work with any of our salespeople, if you're an electrical contractor and you know who your salesperson is, say, I have a control system. I need to talk to Wes, and all our salespeople know how to get a hold of me. Um, that was one of the other ideas of this lab, is that our salespeople, if they needed to bring people in, their
Mm,
contractors can come in and see how the stuff's going to mount on the wall.
right.
They know the dimensions. If an engineer wants to come in and lay out his switchgear room and put this in there, he can see the dimensions, see how it wires.
No, that's an incredible resource, especially in
Yeah.
New York City, where there's so many designers that could take advantage of that resource. So I think that that's an amazing that you have it open even for specifiers who might not even be able to assure that Cooper Electric's going to be the distributor for the project.
Yeah, and for us, it's just, we get to meet them. We get to talk to them about what we can do for
Yeah.
them just by
Hmm.
offering this free service. I mean, I think
Right.
that's a win-win for everyone.
I would agree. I would agree, and I think this is so important for our industry to be able to move forward,
Hmm.
and we're almost out of time here. So I just want to summarize what we've talked about, because again, like, we don't get the opportunity to really talk to many distributors. And granted, I would say that Cooper Electric is at minimum a distributor plus, but really a dealer in spirit. But when it comes to distribution and lighting controls, you really can't just, for most products, just hand over the equipment to the contractor and trust that it's going to go smoothly. I mean, there are certainly savvy contractors out there, don't get me wrong, and who know their lighting control systems very well and can do the projects without any hand holding. But there's always going to be that little thing, or that slight adjustment, or that programming that needs to happen, that having an in-house lighting control specialist at the distribution level really ensures that those hiccups don't cause long-term heartburn, because they will happen. I mean,
Yeah.
you were just talking about tons of things that just come up on a regular basis with projects that distributors can't control for, contractors can't control for, but having that synergy of a skilled distributor in lighting controls supporting the project and facilitating the knowledge that the contractor needs to have really makes that project so much more successful in the end, because having this resource really enables the contractor to have greater access to knowledge and information. And like you said, the resources that exist in this industry outside of that, the sales reps, they may not be available to respond to those calls in a timely manner. And so having that immediate capability, the ability to just show up and say, okay, here's the solution, I know how this works, or even, again, getting that quick turnaround on a quote might be make or break for the project. So this resource is so critical for long-term success of lighting controls, because it's when things go wrong from the end user's perspective, that's when lighting controls suffer the most, because people say, oh, this system's junk, I'll never use lighting controls again. And it's like you said, the most common issue is that wiring, that installation that happens with this equipment. And sometimes it's just, maybe they ran out of the wire and just needed to get that extra, inch out. But, that sort of stuff is still like, yeah, okay, you goofed, let's fix it. As opposed to, you goofed and that's not our equipment, so you need to talk to somebody else, really does make it a bigger issue, because it for longer is going to be a problem on site, and they might not have somebody they can call on. So having somebody that's a third party in-house adds that extra layer of capability.
Absolutely. And really trying to have the reps or the salespeople, sales reps be that doesn't work, because they have their agenda. My agenda is making the customer happy.
Yep.
Right.
And
there
trying
are
to make a
certainly
project
sales agents out there. There are certainly sales agents out there who would say that that's their mantra too.
Yes,
but at the same time,
that's
to
true.
your point, they are locked into a specific brand. They can't deviate from that.
That's true. And they, I'm sorry, lost my train of thought there.
No worries.
And they do have the customer's best interest in their mindset, but they're way too busy to be able to directly impact those jobs. And our business is really, really hectic as it is, and trying to make projects go smoothly really requires that kind of on-site service.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Wes, thank you so much. Great conversation. Absolutely. And you're right. You said it from
Anytime.
the get-go. the best integrators come from the theater. There's no denying that. I don't care what anyone else says. But no, you really offer a value add, and that's really what, ultimately, again, another plug for the Nailed LSC, but that's what this is, right? Getting the distributors to see the value here in having a controls team. You offer the value add for your own team. You are the closest touch point to the customer. The rep is not the touch point to the customer, right? You are the closest touch point. So you can immediately fix things and react for the customer and make things happen, which other people just aren't in a place to be able to do. And ultimately, it's going to lead to more successful projects, which is going to lead to increased revenue from customers coming back to you, whether it's the GC that comes back or the electrician that comes back because they had a great experience. However, whoever, that's what it really comes down to. So when people ask, oh, is there really money for this? Well, yes, because if you're providing that customer service and you're providing that resource, customers are going to continue to come back time and time again, and you're going to pick up that increased market share. And that's really what we're seeing is the distributors who are jumping on this now to put integrators on their team are going to take that increased market share first, and they're going to hold it the tightest.
Yeah, and I think the value add for the end user also, and for the contractors, is we're catching problems in advance. We're saving you change orders and extra money down the line if something goes wrong or something was missed.
Yep.
We're catching these problems in advance.
Yep. Wes, thank you so much. Fantastic conversation.
Thank you.
I will close
great to
this
talk
out.
to you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I will just close this out and remind everyone today's episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Association.
And it's financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, or NAILD. Check out our website, lightingcontrolspodcast.com. Got all of our episodes, information about a lot of things, but especially the NAILD LSC, which we were talking a lot about on here. So you should check it out if it piqued your interest. But also, huge shout out to our sponsor for this episode, which we could not do without, which is involved in the NAILD LSC too. They are one of the front runners for education in the industry. MaxLight CMAX platform, maxlite.com/CMAX. It is really an incredible resource, something worth your time checking out if you're unfamiliar with it. Really provides those solutions that are ready made for distribution to be able to take advantage of the NAILD LSC or any other kind of lighting controls knowledge and capability. So check them out, maxlite.com/CMAX. But until then, thank you for joining me. And Wes, thank you for joining. This was such an amazing conversation.